She bought a husband for $5 by mistake, not knowing the cheap contract man was a hidden millionaire. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. The rain-washed neon lights of Crystal Bay shimmered across the hotel's marble lobby as Harper Lane pressed herself against the storage door, trying to slow her breathing. Mr. Grant's voice slithered through the hallway, again too smooth, too eager, the kind of tone every woman in the service industry learned to fear. Harper, come take a picture with our VIP partners. They want someone photogenic. She clenched her jaw. She needed this job. She needed every shift, every tip, every spare dollar to keep her tiny Harbor District apartment. But tonight Grant had cornered her 4 times already, and she felt like she was suffocating. Her phone vibrated. A notification flashed on the screen. Hire a date, fake husband service only 5? Harper blinked. A stupid ad, but right now anything was better than being alone with Grant. He called again, louder this time. Harper panicked. She slammed the QR button, hit request a temp husband, 30 minutes, and prayed anyone would show up and stand beside her long enough to keep Grant's hands off her. 30 feet away, just outside the hotel's glass doors, a tall man in a grease-stained jacket looked down at his phone. A notification lit his screen. Request accepted. He lifted his eyes, and Harper froze when their gazes locked. The stranger stepped toward her with a steady, unhurried stride, the kind that didn't match the cheap boots or worn-out denim. When he stopped in front of her, she whispered to herself, $5, as long as he scares Grant off. Jackson Reed said nothing at first, just held her gaze in a way that felt too calm for someone hired for pocket change. Harper swallowed, shoved her hair back, and forced a tight smile. You just need to pretend to be my husband for 30 minutes, she murmured. That's all. He nodded. $5. Fair price. Nothing about his tone sounded like a joke. Harper grabbed a serving tray and led him into the gala ballroom. The lights dimmed over crystal chandeliers and velvet curtains. Guests dressed in $1,000 suits and diamond necklaces turned their heads as she passed, then stared openly at the man beside her. She cringed. Of course they would judge. A server with a husband who looked like a mechanic who slept in his truck. Mr. Grant's grin widened when he stepped toward her. There you are, Harper. Who's this? Jackson moved before she could react. He slipped one arm around her waist with an ease that stole at her breath and placed himself directly between her and Grant. She's with me, he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was razor sharp, the kind that cut through a crowd. And you can take one step back. Grant's smirk faltered. Gasps rippled around them as if no one expected a man in cheap clothes to speak with the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Harper's heart pounded. Jackson wasn't acting like a hired date. He was acting like someone who had stood in rooms like this 100 times and never once felt small. Grant tripped over his words. I didn't mean, good, Jackson replied. Then we understand each other. Harper wanted to sink into the floor. This was too much, too bold, too dangerous. But when Jackson's hand rested lightly on her back, she felt safe. For the first time that night, safe. After the gala, she dragged him out a side exit, cheeks flaming. You didn't have to do all that, she muttered. I know, he said simply. They walked toward her apartment building in silence. Jackson carried nothing but a small canvas bag, too small for someone moving in for even a short stay, but she was too exhausted to question it. Inside her apartment, Harper pointed at the tiny kitchen table. Okay, ground rules, 3 of them. Jackson leaned against the counter, waiting. 1. You don't go into my bedroom. 2. You don't rearrange my place. 3. Absolutely no feelings. This is just a contract marriage for 30 days so my landlord doesn't evict me. Jackson's mouth lifted in the faintest hint of a smile. The 3rd one. That depends on you. Her chest tightened. It wasn't a joke. I didn't say it was. She turned away quickly, pretending to fuss with the kettle, even though her hands trembled. This was ridiculous. He was a stranger, a $5 stranger. And yet he moved around her tiny apartment with a quiet confidence, adjusting the loose hinge on her cabinet door, fixing the flickering kitchen light, plugging in her ancient router, and somehow making the Wi-Fi twice as fast. Everything he touched seemed to improve in seconds. "You fix things for a living?" Harper asked. "Sometimes," he said. Ambiguous. Too ambiguous. She handed him her phone so he could sign the contract and send proof to her landlord. But when she reached to take the phone back, the screen flashed a glimpse she wasn't supposed to see. Reed Holdings Global Investment Access CEO Mode. Harper blinked hard. Reed Holdings CEO Mode. On a cracked, beat-up phone used by a man who claimed $5 would buy him dinner, Jaxon locked the screen before she could say anything. "Something wrong?" he asked. "No," she lied, forcing a smile. "Nothing." But long after he stepped into the guest room and closed the door, Harper lay awake, staring at the ceiling. There was nothing normal about tonight. Nothing normal about this man. Nothing normal about the way he moved, spoke, protected her. $5, she thought bitterly. $5 for a man who feels like trouble. And in the dark behind his closed door, Jaxon unlocked his phone again, tapped a single command and whispered, "Activate target protection, Harper Lane." The screen glowed back at him. "Access granted, Reed Holdings internal security." Jaxon exhaled slowly. 30 days, he murmured. "That's all I need to keep her safe." Harper didn't sleep a single minute. By the time dawn broke over Harbor District, her eyes were gritty, her nerves raw, and her brain stuck on one looping question. Who exactly did I bring into my home for $5? The apartment was quiet except for soft clinking sounds coming from the kitchen. She dragged herself out of bed, cracked open her door, and froze. Jaxon was standing barefoot on her tile floor, sleeves rolled up, fixing her broken cabinet hinge with a precision that looked more engineer than mechanic. A pot simmered on the stove, filling the room with the warm scent of garlic and eggs. Her Wi-Fi router, ancient half-dead, sat beside him, lights flashing in patterns she had never seen before. He didn't even glance up as he said, "Your router was throttled by a corrupted DNS setting. Fixed it." Harper blinked. What? Jaxon straightened, wiped his hands on a towel, and finally looked at her. "You'll have faster connection now." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. He had been here for less than 8 hours, and somehow her apartment, her life already ran smoother. Too smooth, too practiced. Rule number 2 was no rearranging, she reminded, crossing her arms. "I didn't rearrange," he said calmly. "I improved." She hated that her chest warmed at the tiny lift of his lips, half smirk, half something else. Harper forced herself to turn away and gather her things for work. But as she reached the door, Jackson's voice stopped her. "I'll walk you." She spun. "Walk me?" "No, absolutely not." "It's early," he replied. "Harbor District isn't safe for a woman walking alone. I've done it for years, and now you don't have to." She bristled. "You're here for a contract marriage, not to babysit me." Jaxon opened the door anyway and held it for her without argument. Something in his unbothered patience irritated her and scared her a little too. They walked in silence until they reached her building lobby. The moment she stepped inside her office floor, she felt every pair of eyes swing her way. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Is that her? Got accused of stealing data? Heard she's desperate for a promotion." Harper kept her chin up. She was used to corporate cruelty. But then the elevator doors opened and CEO Reagan walked out straight toward her. "Lane," he drawled. "I hope you're prepared. We need to discuss your involvement in the Emerald Shore data breach." Harper stiffened. "I had nothing to do with that." Jaxon stepped in front of her so fast she gasped. "You'll speak respectfully," he told Reagan, voice low, controlled. "Or you won't speak at all." The hallway went dead silent. Reagan blinked at him, visibly thrown. "Who the hell are you?" my husband Jaxon replied. Harper's lungs stalled. Reagan scoffed. Mechanic Jaxon didn't flinch. Respectfully, he said, "Your security protocol is so weak a teenager could breach it. If you want to accuse someone of theft, start with your IT department." Harper stared at him. The employees stared at him. Even Reagan stared at him. No one talked to a CEO like that. Reagan's jaw tightened as he stepped back, suddenly unsure. "This isn't over," he muttered, before storming away. When he disappeared, Harper hissed, "What the hell was that?" "Truth," Jaxon said simply. "And you don't let people treat your wife like she's beneath them." Her pulse jumped at the word wife. It shouldn't have affected her. This wasn't real. He wasn't real. He was temporary. $5 temporary. At lunch, things got worse. Mason Hudson, her wealthy ex, strolled into the cafeteria with his usual entourage, all polished arrogance and expensive cologne. His smile sharpened when he spotted her. "Well, well," Mason mocked. Harper Lane, still pretending to matter Jaxon, who had insisted on accompanying her just to make sure she ate slowly, set his fork down. Harper glared at Mason. "Leave." Or what? Mason laughed. "Your husband will change my oil." He looked Jaxon up and down. "Tell me, man, did she pay you hourly or just give you leftovers?" Jaxon stood. The room hushed as he stepped forward, slow and deliberate, the energy around him shifting. His posture, straightened shoulders, squared eyes, cool and unreadable. Money couldn't buy presence like that. It was either born or built through power. "Say anything like that again," Jaxon said softly, "and I will make sure your entire investment portfolio collapses in a week." Mason faltered. "Excuse me, you heard me." Harper stared between them, her heart pounding. Jaxon wasn't acting. He wasn't bluffing. He spoke like someone who could actually do it. Mason swallowed hard, then scoffed weakly and retreated with far less swagger than he'd arrived with. Harper pressed her hands to her temples. "You're insane. You can't threaten people like that." "Yes, I can," he said, "and I meant it. That's not the point." He looked at her with quiet certainty. "The point is no one humiliates you." The sincerity softened something deep inside her, something she didn't want softened. That night, Harper returned home exhausted. Jaxon was sitting at her tiny kitchen table, laptop open. When she walked past him, she accidentally glimpsed the screen. Strings of financial code, market indexes, a dashboard she'd only ever seen in articles about major investors. "Jaxon," she asked slowly, "what are you doing?" He closed the laptop calmly. "Checking my bank account." "That," she pointed at the graphs, "does not look like a bank account." He shrugged. "Different banks have different interfaces." "Right," she said flatly, "and I'm the Queen of England." He didn't laugh, only watched her quietly, too intently. She escaped to her bedroom, shutting the door and leaning against it. Her heartbeat was a mess. Nothing added up. Not the way he spoke, not the way people reacted to him, not the way he carried himself like he'd been born into power, not poverty. And that phone of his. Harper sank onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. "I've brought home a stranger," she whispered. In the living room, Jaxon read a message on his phone. "Boss, the council is waiting for your decision." He deleted it instantly. Then, barely audible, he murmured to himself, "Just 30 days. Keep her safe for 30 days. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers downtown as Harper stepped out of the apartment building, clutching her bag as if it were armor. She didn't want Jaxon to walk her to work again, but there he was, leaning against the railing, hands in his pockets, looking like danger dressed in denim. "You don't have to follow me," she said. "I'm not following," he replied. "I'm accompanying." Before she could argue, he fell into step beside her, quiet and steady. And somehow that steadiness made her even more nervous. When they reached her office lobby, the tension in the air thickened instantly. Every employee whispered the moment she walked in. "That's her. Data breach girl. Heard she might get fired today." Harper kept walking, eyes fixed ahead, until CEO Reagan stepped out of the conference room and blocked her path. His smug smirk made her stomach twist. "Lane," he said, hands behind his back. "Just the woman I need. We have some concerns about your involvement in last night's missing files." Harper stiffened. "Sir, I didn't." Reagan stepped closer, lips curling. "Employees under pressure do desperate things. A poor woman like you." He didn't get to finish. Jaxon slid in front of her, planting himself between them like a wall made of steel and fury. "Step back," he said. Reagan blinked. "Excuse me," she said. She didn't do it. Jaxon replied, "And you're going to speak to her with respect." The lobby went dead silent. Harper's heart pounded, half panic, half shock, half something she didn't want to name. Reagan straightened his tie, visibly rattled. "Who the hell are you?" "Her husband." The word echoed like a dropped glass. Reagan cleared his throat. "Lane, control your security first." Jaxon cut in. Your entire IT system could be breached by a high schooler. Reagan turned red. He actually stepped away. Harper tugged Jackson's sleeve, whispering through clenched teeth. Are you trying to get me fired? No, he murmured back. I'm trying to stop people from walking all over you. She didn't know whether to scream at him or kiss him. Both seemed like terrible ideas. The rest of the morning felt like standing in the middle of a collapsing building. The Emerald Shore data breach investigation pulled Harper into endless questioning. Her coworkers avoided eye contact. Some even looked at her with pity. By noon, she was exhausted. Jaxon appeared beside her desk with a takeout bag. Lunch. I didn't ask for lunch. You need to eat. Her stomach betrayed her by growling. They sat together in the cafeteria, Harper desperately trying to ignore the eyes on them, when Mason Hudson strutted in with 2 interns trailing behind him like loyal dogs. Her ex. Just what she needed. Well, look who it is, Mason said loudly. Harper Lane. Still pretending you belong in this building. Before Harper could open her mouth, Mason's gaze flicked to Jaxon. And the husband. How's the oil-changing businessman? Harper felt her entire body heat with humiliation. Mason, leave. Now. Mason smirked. Why? I'm just curious how much he paid for you. $10.15. Jaxon stood up. There was no anger in his face, just a cold surgical calm that made the entire cafeteria fall silent. Walk away, he told Mason. Or what? Mason laughed. You'll fix my carburetor. You'll lose your entire investment portfolio in a week, Jaxon said it softly. And your father will wonder why his heir can't keep his assets secure. Mason stopped laughing. Harper watched the blood drain from his face. No one joked like that, not unless they had the power to follow through. You're crazy, Mason muttered, stepping back. Both of you are insane. He left in a hurry. Harper rounded on Jaxon. You can't just threaten people like that. He insulted you. That doesn't justify financial murder. It does to me, he said simply. She had no idea what to do with the warmth blooming in her chest, so she shoved it down, grabbed her bag, and fled back to her desk before she did something stupid like thank him. Late that evening, Harper was still at her desk trying to rebuild her project files. She hunched over her laptop, eyes burning from staring at code and presentation slides. She didn't even notice she'd fallen asleep until she woke to the sound of quiet typing. Jaxon sat in her chair, her laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard like a man solving a puzzle he'd already cracked long ago. Jaxon, she whispered. He froze. Then he closed the laptop very slowly. What? What were you doing? Harper asked. Checking your firewalls, he said. That wasn't a firewall interface. He didn't answer. You were running scripts I've never seen, she pressed. That wasn't simple repair work. Still nothing. She stepped closer, voice low. You're not a mechanic. Jaxon looked up at her eyes, unreadable in the dim office light. I never said I was. The door of her heart thumped painfully. He stood, picked up her coat, brushed dust off the shoulders, and handed it to her. You're tired, he said. Let's go home. But when she followed him toward the elevator, something inside her cracked open. Not in fear, though she should be afraid, but in the terrifying possibility that she wasn't living with a stranger. She was living with a man she knew absolutely nothing about. A man who claimed to cost $5. A man who moved like he'd been built in a different world. That night, Harper lay awake again, staring at her ceiling, whispering to the empty air. Who are you, Jaxon Reed? Across the hall, Jaxon read a message on his phone. Boss, the ghost investor cover is holding. No one suspects you intervened. He deleted it. Then looked toward Harper's bedroom door, his voice barely a breath. Don't find out yet, he whispered. Not until I can keep you safe. Harper's stomach twisted into a knot the moment she stepped into the towering glass atrium of the Star Lake Resort bidding hall. The place radiated wealth, marble floors, gold accents, a chandelier that probably cost more than her yearly salary. She hugged her laptop to her chest, painfully aware that the proposal inside it had been sabotaged just hours earlier. She wasn't prepared for this, but she had no choice. She forced a breath, smoothed her blazer, and walked deeper into the hall, only to freeze when she saw him. Jaxon, not in a grease-stained jacket, not in worn denim. He wore a tailored black shirt that clung to him like a second skin, sleeves rolled once to reveal strong forearms, his posture straight, effortless, commanding. For a second, she forgot how to breathe. Everyone was looking at him, not judging, respecting. Jaxon caught her staring, pushed off the wall and walked toward her. "You're pale," he said quietly. "Didn't sleep." "You shouldn't be here," she whispered back. "This is a corporate event." He didn't blink. So, before she could argue, Mason Hudson's voice sliced through the air. "Well, if it isn't my favorite charity case." Mason strolled over with a smirk. "Ready to embarrass your company again, Harper." Her teeth clenched. But Jaxon stepped slightly closer, his presence sliding around her, like armor. Mason's eyes flicked to him. "You brought the—" Mechanic Jaxon offered a cold, sharp smile. "Funny. I didn't bring the clown." Harper nearly choked. Mason sputtered, but before he could retaliate, the speakers crackled to life. "All representatives, please proceed to the presentation chamber." Saved. Barely. Inside, Harper found her seat near the front. Her palms were sweating as she opened her laptop, and her heart dropped straight through the floor. The proposal folder was empty, blank, white, gone. They'd deleted everything, all the work she'd done for weeks. Her throat tightened. "No, no, no, please no." Jaxon leaned down behind her. "Show me." She turned the screen toward him with trembling fingers. He didn't panic, didn't even frown. He pulled the laptop closer and began typing. Fast. Not fast like fixing a router. Fast like someone who'd written code their whole life. Harper stared at his hands as he ran command lines she didn't recognize, unlocked hidden caches, decrypted corrupted files, and restored nearly the entire proposal in under 5 minutes. The audience murmured behind them as the projector flickered on, but Harper couldn't hear any of it over her racing pulse. Jaxon looked at her and said, "Your system's security is awful." She swallowed. "How did you go present?" he whispered. "You're ready." When Harper walked to the stage, she felt like she was moving through water, heavy, slow, disbelieving. But then she caught sight of Jaxon sitting in the back row, arms folded, legs stretched out, watching her, with a calm intensity that settled her nerves. She began confidently explaining Star Lake Resort's environmental model, its projected profits, long-term growth. But halfway through, Mason Hudson interrupted with a smug wave. "Sorry, I just want clarification," he called loudly. "Why should we trust someone whose last project ended in a data breach?" Gasps echoed around the room. Harper felt her throat close, but she pictured Jaxon in the back, unmoving, unshaken, and forced herself to steady her breath. The data breach, she said clearly, was caused by an internal vulnerability that has since been patched. And in the last 12 hours, my team rebuilt a stronger, cleaner, more transparent system. Murmurs shifted, some impressed, some surprised. Harper pushed through the rest of the presentation, voice unwavering. When she finished, polite applause filled the room. Jackson's was the only one she heard. Next came Hudson Group's presentation. Expensive visuals, dramatic graphs, Mason flashing fake confidence like it was currency. Harper watched with growing dread as the board nodded along. Then the door at the back creaked open. Stephen Blackwell, the lead assessor for the council, walked inside, a man whose decisions determined billion-dollar deals. Everyone stood as he approached. Everyone, except Jaxon. Stephen's eyes landed on him. He bowed his head, bowed, and murmured low but audible, "The board is assembled as per your request, sir." Harper nearly dropped her pen. Jackson's expression didn't change. He didn't acknowledge Stephen at all, like he was used to being bowed to. Harper felt the floor tilt under her feet. When presentations ended, the council took their seats for questioning. One of the members raised a tablet. "Hudson Group," he said, voice clipped. "Your financial documents indicate an unexplained surge in capital last quarter. Please clarify." Mason blinked. Our accountants handle that." Another member chimed in. "According to our updated risk matrix, your numbers were flagged at 4:17 a.m. today." Harper's eyes widened. Someone tampered with Hudson's documents. Recently. Quietly. Perfectly. She didn't need to look at Jaxon to know who orchestrated it. But when she did glance back, he was watching her. Not the council, not the chaos. Her. Something in his gaze flickered, warning, apology, promise. She didn't know which. After the session recessed, Harper stepped out into the hallway, dizzy with adrenaline. She leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breath, and caught Mason's voice around the corner. This is impossible. Who replaced the entire assessment board overnight? Who has that kind of power? His assistant stammered, Sir. They said it was on orders from Reed Holdings. Harper's heart stopped. Reed Holdings. The same name she'd seen on Jackson's phone. The same name CEO Reagan had whispered about. The same name that kept circling her life like a storm. She pressed a trembling hand to her lips as the full weight of realization hit her. Her $5 husband wasn't just a man with secrets. He was connected to the kind of power that could reshape entire corporations, and he'd used it for her. But why her? The question hollowed her chest as she pushed off the wall and walked away, every step echoing with a truth she wasn't ready to face. She didn't know who Jackson Reed really was, but she knew one thing for certain now. He was far, far more than $5. Harper barely had time to process the chaos of the bidding event before everything in her world snapped into darkness. One moment she was crossing the dim parking garage, replaying every impossible thing Jackson had done that day. The next, a rough hand clamped over her mouth and a black hood dropped over her head. Her scream never made it out. She kicked, twisted, fought, but someone grabbed her wrists and yanked them behind her. Tape wrapped around her arms, her ankles, her mouth. She heard a van door slam and felt her body thrown onto cold metal. Then a voice, low, unfamiliar, growled beside her ear. Moi dalan se, chun bi du han den. Her blood froze. Han, they weren't after her, they were after Jackson. The ride felt endless, a rattling nightmare of potholes and whispered threats. The van finally stopped. Rough hands hauled her out and dumped her onto a concrete floor. When they ripped off the hood, Harper blinked up at flickering fluorescent lights in an abandoned warehouse. 3 men stood over her. One lifted his phone, snapped a picture of her bound form, and sent it somewhere. Harper's voice broke through the tape. The tallest man crouched down and ripped the tape from her mouth. She gasped from the sting. Why are you doing this? I don't have money. I can't give you anything. The man smirked. We don't want your money. Her heartbeat thundered. He leaned in. We want him. I don't know who you mean. Sure you do, he replied, tapping her cheek lightly. The man who came running into the Starlake event like he owned the place. Harper's breath stuttered. Jackson. They wanted Jackson. But why would anyone target a man who claimed he needed $5 for dinner? Hours passed. Harper's wrists were raw from struggling, and every minute felt like another layer of panic sinking into her bones. She replayed every sign she had ignored. His reactions, his instincts, the way people bowed to him, the way he could rebuild a proposal in minutes, the way he said her name too gently for someone who didn't care. The truth hovered on the edge of her mind, too frightening to face. Suddenly a phone buzzed. The tallest man looked down, cursed under his breath. He's not here yet. Maybe he's not coming, another said. No, the leader replied. He'll come. The Reed boy always comes for his toys. Harper stiffened. Reed boy. As in Reed Holdings. The warehouse door crashed open. A blur of movement swept through the entrance, silent, fast, deadly. The first man went down with a grunt. Another turned, gun raised. A shadow slammed him into a pillar hard enough to crack it. Harper blinked through tears. Jackson. He stepped into the dim light, chest heaving from exertion, eyes burning with something close to fury and fear. Real fear. For her. Her voice trembled. You came. Of course I did. 2 more men lunged from behind him. Harper screamed. Jackson didn't hesitate. He moved like someone who had been trained to handle knives, guns, fists, all of it. A swift elbow to one attacker's ribs. A ruthless twist disarming the other. Their weapons slid across the concrete floor. One of the men bleeding snarled at Harper. This is all your fault. Jackson grabbed him by the collar and slammed him back. Don't you dare look at her. The man collapsed, groaning. Silence swallowed the room. Jackson dropped to his knees beside Harper and worked the tape off her wrists, his hands trembling slightly. The flickering light softened the shadows on his face. Are you hurt? He asked. Harper shook her head, trying not to cry. They said they wanted you. Why? Who are you, Jackson? For the first time, he didn't answer. He couldn't. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Jaxon lifted her effortlessly into his arms and carried her outside toward the shoreline behind the warehouse. The cool ocean breeze hit her face, grounding her. He set her down gently on the old weathered dock. Harper pulled her knees to her chest, shaking. I could have died, and they didn't care, because the real target was you. He inhaled slowly. Harper, no, she snapped. Don't lie to me. Don't pretend you're just some broke mechanic who happened to be nearby whenever my life fell apart. She looked at him with raw, pleading eyes. What are you hiding from me? He closed his eyes as if bracing against something sharp. Some things happened years ago, things I can't drag you into. That's not an answer. Her voice cracked. Stop protecting me, just tell me the truth. He took a step toward her, but she scooted back. Don't, she whispered. Don't touch me unless you're going to tell me who you really are. Jackson's jaw tightened. Pain flickered across his face for a split second, real unfiltered. You don't understand, he said softly. If you know, they'll come after you again. They already did, Harper cried. They used me as bait because of you. You think not knowing will protect me. It won't. His expression shuddered. He looked like a man trapped between who he used to be and who he had to be now. Harper, murmured, voice breaking at the edges. I didn't want you anywhere near my past. Then why did you walk into my life? She whispered. For a moment he said nothing. Then, because I couldn't stay away, it broke her. It broke everything. A pained groan came from behind them. One of the injured kidnappers reached for Harper's ankle. Jaxon whirled, grabbing the man by the collar. The man coughed out. We were hired, not by Hudson, by someone who wants him dead. Jaxon Reed. He collapsed again. Harper's breath seized. Reed. She'd heard that name before. Too many times to be coincidence. Jackson's face hardened. You weren't supposed to hear that. But I did, she whispered, backing away slowly. I did. A single tear slid down her cheek. Tell me the truth, she begged. Please. He reached for her slowly, as if approaching a frightened bird, but Harper stepped back again. I can't do this, she said. Not until I know who you really are. Then she turned and ran down the dock, leaving him standing alone under the gray sky, the waves crashing at his feet. Jaxon didn't chase her. He just whispered her name into the wind. Harper. Harper's hands were still trembling when she pushed open her apartment door. All she wanted was a shower, a blanket, silence, anything to erase the image of Jaxon fighting like a man trained for war. But when she stepped inside, something felt wrong. The living room was quiet, too quiet. Then she heard a faint mechanical click. She turned toward the bookshelf just as a hidden seam along the wall glowed soft gold. The entire shelf slid sideways, revealing a narrow doorway and a room she had never seen before. Her breath hitched. A secret room inside her apartment. Harper stepped in cautiously. The light inside was cold, clinical. A glass table stood in the center of the room, covered in neatly organized files. Multiple screens lined the wall, displaying maps, financial graphs, surveillance feeds, some of which showed her. Walking to work, leaving the grocery store, sitting at her desk. Her lungs stopped working. On the table, a large black folder was labeled Harper Lane 10-year observation file. A chill crawled up her spine. Her fingers shook as she opened it. The pages inside detailed everything: her student loans, her past leases, medical forms, emails she barely remembered writing, even the scholarship refuting her senior year tuition, the one she thought was a miracle. Funded by Reed Holdings, her vision blurred. Another binder read, Phase 1 Education Support, Phase 2 Professional Growth, Phase 3 Emotional Stabilization. Her heart cracked. Emotional stabilization. What was she, a project? Her body trembled as she whispered, Oh my God. Jaxon, what have you done to me? A soft sound came from behind her footsteps. Harper. She spun, eyes wide, clutching the folder like a shield. Jaxon stood in the doorway, rain still dripping from his hair, eyes dark with something that wasn't anger. Fear. He took one step toward her. She stepped back. Her voice broke. You've been watching me for 10 years. He didn't deny it. You tracked everything I did. My job, my school, my bills, my entire life. What is this place, Jaxon? It's not what you think. No, she threw the file onto the table, pages scattering. Because it looks exactly like what I think. It looks like I've been some kind of investment, someone to be managed, controlled. That's not it, he said sharply. I was protecting you, protecting me. Her laugh cracked like glass. By hiding this from me, by tricking your way into my life, pretending to be broke. He inhaled deeply, knuckles white. You weren't supposed to see this room. She stared at him, tears burning her eyes. And why not? His voice softened. Because it would scare you. Well, she whispered, it did. Jaxon slowly crossed the room and closed all the screens as if trying to hide the evidence. Harper pressed herself against the far wall. Harper, he said quietly, what happened to you today? The kidnapping. That wasn't random. Someone is after me. They have been for years, and you're getting caught in the crossfire. She shook her head. But why me? Because you matter to me. The answer only stabbed deeper. Then why lie? Why pretend you were someone else? For a moment, the mask he always wore cracked. Pain flickered across his features. I didn't want you to run, he said. And I knew you would if you knew who I was. Her voice trembled. Who are you really? He didn't look away this time. I'm Jaxon Reed, he said, heir to Reed Holdings. Her world tilted. Reed Holdings, the name she had heard whispered in hallways, the name people bowed to, the name that had controlled parts of her life without her knowing. She sank onto the edge of the table, breath shuddering. I don't understand. Why me? Why follow me for 10 years? Jackson's jaw tightened as if holding back something heavy. Because you saved my life, he said quietly. 10 years ago, when I was attacked in an alley. You didn't know who I was. You didn't care. You helped me anyway. You were the only person who looked at me without wanting something. Harper shook her head. That doesn't justify this. I know, he whispered. She stood wiping a tear angrily. I'm leaving. Harper, no. Stay away from me. She pushed past him, but the moment she reached the hallway, her knees buckled. Jaxon caught her instinctively. Don't touch me, she snapped. His hands dropped immediately. You're in shock. You shouldn't be alone. She looked at him with a mix of hurt and fury. I've been alone this whole time. I just didn't know it. Then she forced herself to her feet, walked out the apartment door, and didn't look back. Rain pounded the streets outside as Harper wandered through the harbor district. Her hair soaked her clothes heavy, her heart splintering with each step. She couldn't go home. She couldn't go to work. She couldn't go to Jaxon. She was homeless in every way but the literal sense. She sank into the doorway of a closed cafe, wrapping her arms around herself. Tears slipped down her cheeks unnoticed in the rain. How do you trust someone who lied with every breath? Yet how do you stop loving someone who risked his life for you? Thunder rolled overhead. Harper closed her eyes, exhausted. When she opened them, Jaxon stood 5 feet away, drenched, unmoving, as if he'd been there a long time. He didn't approach her. He didn't speak. He simply watched her with an expression she had never seen on him before. Surrender. Harper, he said softly, I'll give you whatever space you need, but I'm not leaving you alone in the rain. She looked away sharply. I don't want your protection. I know, he replied quietly, but I'm staying anyway. She didn't answer, neither did he. They simply stood there, 2 people soaked to the bone, bound together by a truth too heavy for either of them to hold. Miles away, Harper's phone buzzed with a notification she wouldn't see until morning. Your bank account has been frozen. Your employment status suspended. Your lease terminated. Harper wrapped her arms tighter around herself as the storm raged on. Her entire life was falling apart, and the one man who could fix it was the one man she no longer trusted. Harper woke to the sound of a train horn trembling through the abandoned station. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Cold concrete under her, a thin jacket wrapped around her, a half-collapsed bench for a pillow. The city lights flickered somewhere beyond the cracked windows. Then it all came back, the secret room, the files, the betrayal, the kidnapping, the rain, the look on Jackson's face as she walked away, and the 3 messages she saw when she finally turned her phone back on. Bank account, frozen employment, suspended lease terminated, her entire life erased in the span of a night. Harper sat up slowly, hugging her knees. She tried not to cry again. She had cried too much already, enough to salt the entire station. She wouldn't give in now. A stray breeze swept through, carrying the stale smell of old train oil. She tightened her jacket around her shoulders and forced herself to think. She had nothing left, but she still had herself, and she refused to fall apart in front of the world. Outside the station, the streets were waking up: delivery trucks, cyclists, the hum of downtown. Harper stepped into the morning light, her face pale but determined. She walked to the nearest ATM, ignoring the stares from commuters. She typed her PIN, praying. Account locked. Please contact bank assistance. Her throat squeezed. She checked her email. Your employment at Emerald Shore Development is suspended pending investigation. Unauthorized vacancy of premises. Your lease is terminated effective immediately. So that was that. She wasn't just unemployed. She wasn't just broke. She was officially homeless. She sank onto the curb outside a convenience store, knees pulled to her chest, trying to keep her breathing even. A store clerk peeked at her from behind the window. Sympathy in her eyes, but she didn't step out. The word kidnapping was still floating around the city. People didn't want trouble. Harper buried her face in her arms. A shadow fell over her. She looked up and instantly felt her chest twist. A middle-aged doctor in a crisp white coat stood above her. Miss Lane, I'm Dr. Yates. I was sent by... No, Harper whispered, standing abruptly. Whatever he sent you here for, tell him to stop. The doctor lifted his palms. He said you might refuse help, but he also said you hadn't eaten or been examined since the incident. Harper bit back a sob. I don't need him watching over me anymore. He's not watching over you, the doctor said softly. He's trying to make sure you don't collapse. She shook her head, backing away. Stop. Please, just stop. The doctor stepped back, respecting her distance. Then at least take this. He offered a sealed bottle of water. No name attached. No charge. Harper hesitated. Then she took it with shaking fingers. When she looked up again, the doctor was already walking away. Her heart clenched painfully. She hated that part of her felt. Relieved, comforted, warm. She hated even more that she didn't want to hate those feelings. By afternoon, her humiliation deepened. A reporter shoved a phone in her face. Harper, is it true you faked your kidnapping? Another shouted. Are you working with a criminal group? Were you trying to sabotage Hudson Group? Then came the cruelest. Did your husband help you stage it? Harper's face burned. She pushed past them, but the swarm grew. Not until a security guard intervened did she break free, trembling. She ducked behind a loading dock chest, tight with anger, fear, and exhaustion. Her phone buzzed again. A message flashed. You made big enemies. B plan starts tonight. Her blood ran cold. Not Hudson Group. Someone else. Someone darker. She swallowed hard, clutching the phone. Then she heard footsteps approaching. She recognized them instantly. She closed her eyes. Please don't. But Jaxon stopped a respectful distance away, 5 feet, maybe 6, just like the night before. Rain-soaked hair, clothes wrinkled, a look in his eyes she had never seen before. Not confidence, not control, and not power, just heartbreak. Harper, he murmured, voiced quiet. You can hate me if it makes you feel safer. You can walk away, but you shouldn't be alone right now. She didn't look at him. I'm not yours to protect. I know, he said softly, but I'm still going to protect you. Stop. Her voice cracked. Stop acting like you get to decide that. He swallowed hard. I'm not deciding anything for you. I'm staying close enough to make sure you're safe, but far enough that you can breathe. He didn't step closer. He didn't reach for her. He just stood there in silence like a guard dog, waiting for permission that would never come. It hurt. It hurt in a way Harper wasn't prepared for. As dusk fell, Harper returned to the abandoned station. She sat on a bench under the broken light, exhaustion making her limbs heavy. At the far end of the station, she saw Jaxon sitting on the ground, leaning against a graffiti-covered pillar, watching the entrance, watching her, not approaching, not interfering, just there. Something in her chest softened, then hardened again. She didn't know what she felt. She didn't want to know. She curled up, trying to sleep. A few hours later, the sound of footsteps echoed through the station. Harper jolted awake. 3 men in dark suits walked in clean-cut, sharp eyes, expensive shoes. Not gang members, they wore badges at their belts, Yeet Holdings, executive security. The tallest one scanned the area, then spoke into a radio. Subject located. Proceed with silent perimeter. Harper's heart dropped. Subject, not name, not person, subject. The men nodded to each other and dispersed, taking up positions around the station. Harper pressed a hand over her mouth. Jaxon was protecting her. Not with fists, not with threats, but with an entire corporation moving quietly in the shadows. A quiet shiver moved through her as the realization settled in her bones. He hadn't given up on her. He was just learning how not to break her. Far across the station, Jaxon looked up from his place by the pillar. Their eyes met. Neither of them moved, and though she didn't call out to him, didn't wave, didn't smile, she didn't turn away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. A thin, fragile thread stretched between them, painful, fragile, impossible, but still there, still holding, still waiting for whatever came next. Harper woke with a sharp inhale, startled by the cold metal bench against her spine and the distant city sounds filtering through the abandoned station. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then everything returned in a crushing wave. Her frozen bank account, her lost job, her broken lease, her fight with Jaxon, and the shadowy threat that said Plan B starts tonight. She pushed herself up from the bench, rubbing the stiffness from her arms. She couldn't stay here. She couldn't hide. And she definitely couldn't rely on anyone, not even the man who loved her, in the strangest, most devastating ways. She needed a plan. Harper took a steadying breath. No more running, she whispered. No more waiting for someone to save me. She stepped into the morning light with shaking legs and a mind finally sharpening into focus. She was going to clear her name. She was going to take down the Hudsons, and she was going to do it alone. Her first stop was a small cafe she used to frequent during her early days at Emerald Shore. The owner, an older woman named Rosa, spotted her instantly. "Harper, my God, look at you. Are you all right?" Harper forced a tired smile. "I need your help." Rosa led her to a back booth, slid her a cup of hot tea, and listened as Harper explained everything. The data breach, sabotage, the kidnapping, the fake rumors, the frozen accounts. Rosa's eyes hardened. "That family's been dirty for years. I'll call the others. We owe you." Within an hour, business owners, freelancers, and vendors Harper had supported over the years arrived one by one, offering screenshots, emails, payment logs, and camera footage. Harper built a case page by page, hands trembling, not with fear this time, but with determination. By the time she finished, she had a comprehensive file of Hudson Group wrongdoing. She wasn't just fighting back, she was firing the first real shot, and she was doing it on her own terms. The press conference was held that afternoon in a rented hall downtown. Harper stood behind a podium with trembling fingers, but her voice was steady as she faced a wall of cameras. "Today," she began, "I'm here to reveal the truth about the Hudson family's involvement in corporate sabotage, data fraud, and criminal misconduct." Gasps echoed through the room. She presented the evidence, every forged document, every manipulative lie, every illegal move Mason and his father had orchestrated. Her voice grew firmer with each slide she displayed. At the back of the room, reporters whispered excitedly. Some even nodded in approval. For the first time in days, Harper felt something like pride blooming in her chest. She didn't need anyone to speak for her. She could speak for herself. Just as she closed her final file, the lights in the hall flickered, then went out. A thin, blue glow flickered on the giant LED screen behind her. Harper froze. A video began to play. She saw herself bound, frightened during the kidnapping. Then it cut abruptly to a clip of Jaxon picking her up and whispering something against her hair. The audio had been manipulated to sound like, "Make it look real, Harper. We need them to believe it." Her breath lodged in her throat. The footage cut between scenes, each one edited to make it appear as if she and Jaxon had staged the entire abduction as a ploy to sabotage Hudson Group. The room erupted. Reporters shouted. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks. "What do you have to say about this? Did you fake your own kidnapping? Who is Jaxon Reed to you? Did you use him to attack Hudson Group?" Harper's stomach twisted. She tried to speak, but no words came. Someone had been watching. Someone had edited this. Someone wanted her destroyed. Her pulse hammered unevenly as she shoved through the crowd, tears burning the corners of her eyes. She stumbled into a hallway, gasping for air. "Jaxon," she whispered, though she didn't know if she meant it as a plea or an accusation. But he wasn't there. He wasn't anywhere. Her phone rang. a number she didn't recognize. She answered shakily. "Hello," a male voice, smooth and dangerous, replied. "This is your final warning, Miss Lane. Withdraw your name from the Starlake Project, or the next video we release won't be fake." Her blood drained to ice. "Who are you?" she whispered. "You'll know soon. But you should understand one thing: your husband cannot protect you from us. Not anymore." The line went dead. Harper leaned against the wall, mind spinning. This wasn't Hudson Group. This was bigger, deeper, more calculated. She needed answers. She needed Jaxon. But when she reached the street outside the hall, a black SUV screeched past her Reed Holdings security insignia, barely visible on the tinted glass. Inside, she saw suits arguing, papers flying. Panic. Something was happening. Something involving Jaxon. Harper's fear for him overshadowed her anger. She had lost everything except the truth she carried in her chest. Messy, painful, terrifying. She still cared about him, deeply, dangerously. "Jaxon," she whispered into the wind, "what are you caught in?" The city lights blurred as she stood at the curb, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and longing. Far above her, in a penthouse lit by the glow of emergency red LEDs, the Reed Holdings board screamed at one another. "Your CEO is out of control. He jeopardized the company for a woman. He used corporate power illegally to tamper with the Starlake board." And in the center of the storm alone, silent, unflinching, sat Jaxon Reed, the man the world feared, the man Harper had loved, the man who had risked everything for her. And for the first time, she wasn't sure either of them would survive what came next. The city lights glittered below her like broken glass as Harper stood alone inside the empty press hall, hours after the chaos. Cameras were gone, reporters dispersed, lights dimmed to a soft hum, but her heartbeat still pounded like she'd run miles. She had exposed the Hudsons. She had stood her ground. She had reclaimed her voice, but instead of feeling victorious, she felt hollow. Jaxon was gone. Vanished like smoke the moment his life, his company, and his name exploded across headlines. And the twisted video played at her conference left one truth ringing in her skull: someone powerful wanted to destroy them both. Harper wrapped her arms around herself and whispered into the quiet, "Where are you?" Her answer came the next morning in the form of a sealed ivory envelope slipped under the station bench where she'd been sleeping for days. Inside was a single line written in Jackson's sharp, controlled handwriting. "If you want the truth, meet me where we met." Her breath caught. Crystal Bay Hotel, the place she'd hired a husband for $5. She arrived just before sunset. The lobby looked different now, quieter, dimmer, holding its breath. A staff member approached and bowed slightly. "Miss Lane." "This way, please." He led her into the grand ballroom, now transformed into something out of a dream. White roses lined the aisle. Soft golden lights glowed overhead. A single path of candles flickered toward the front of the room. No guests, no music, just him. Jaxon stood at the center of the aisle, wearing a white suit tailored perfectly to his lean frame. His hair was combed back, his expression devastatingly earnest and achingly uncertain, as if he wasn't sure she would stay. Harper's breath tangled in her chest. Why did you make it look like a wedding?" she whispered as she approached. "Because it can also be a farewell," he said quietly. "If that's what you want." Her heart twisted. Jaxon took a slow step forward. "Harper, you deserve the truth. All of it." She nodded, bracing for impact. 10 years ago, I was ambushed by men sent to eliminate me during a power struggle inside Reed Holdings. I was bleeding desperate, hiding in a back alley. Harper's eyes widened. "And then you appeared," he said, voice softening. "You, an 18-year-old girl with no reason to help me, gave me your last $20, bandaged my arm, and told me I didn't deserve to die alone." A trembling breath escaped her. "You saved my life," he continued, "not because of my name or my money, but because you were good, the kind of good I didn't believe existed anymore." He swallowed. "I swore that night to protect yours." Her voice broke. "You protected me by lying to me." "Yes," he admitted, guilt shadowing his features. "And I regret every lie, but I don't regret loving you." Harper's throat tightened. "I never meant to manipulate your life. I only wanted to make sure you would never face what I faced. But somewhere along the way, I failed to realize the difference between protecting someone and controlling their choices. He slowly reached into his jacket. She stiffened, but instead of a ring, he pulled out a sheet of blank paper. "What? Is that a marriage contract?" he said with no terms, no conditions, no expiration dates, no secrets. "You fill in whatever you want from me, and I'll sign." Harper blinked back tears. "Why, 'cause the first contract I gave you cost $5, he said softly. "This one costs everything I am." Her resolve cracked. She reached out and touched the paper fingertips, trembling. "But I don't want a contract," she whispered. Jackson's expression faltered. She stepped closer, so close she could see the fear in his eyes. "I want you," she finished. "Not the CEO, not the money, not the power behind your name. Just you. The man who ran into a warehouse for me. The man who sat 5 feet away in a train station just so I wouldn't feel alone." Jackson exhaled, shakily, relief, surprise, heartbreak, all tangled at once. "Harper." She took the paper and gently placed it back against his chest. "I won't sign a contract, but if you stay, if you choose to love me without hiding, then we can write our own story together." His hand closed around hers, not possessive, not controlling, steady. "Then let's start now," he whispered. And for the first time since their lives collided, she leaned into him, not because she needed saving, but because she chose him. Later, as they stepped out of the ballroom hand in hand, a sharply dressed lawyer approached Harper with a heavy gold envelope. "Miss Lane," he said respectfully, "I represent North Star Conglomerate. We have reason to believe the Hudsons used assets that legally belong to your family to bid on Star Lake Resort. North Star wishes to transfer ownership to you." Harper's breath froze. "My family," she echoed. "But I don't." "You will soon," the lawyer interrupted gently. "Your past is more connected to this than you think." Jackson's jaw tightened. Harper's fingers tightened around his. She whispered half to him and half to herself. "I guess this isn't the end, is it?" He kissed her knuckles. "It's the beginning." As the lights dimmed around them, Harper turned to the audience in her heart, the people who had walked through every twist and heartbreak with her. "If you want to see what happens next," she murmured, with a soft smile, "drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what part hit you the hardest. Like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of our journey." Her voice warmed. "And thank you for staying with us. Their story had only just begun."